Hey there, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week on the 302, it's a night of thrills, chills, and oddities, and everything that goes bump in the night. I'm talking, of course, about Rockwood's Goth Ball. We're going to have a preview of everything you can experience. Stand by, the 302 is going to raise hairs on the back of your neck. Get your costumes ready. Goth Ball is just a week away on September 29th, and we are here at Rockwood to talk about Goth Ball and all kinds of great things that you can see whenever you come out. I'm joined by our friend Ryan Grover to talk a little bit about all of this. Ryan, thank you so much for having us in.
Thank you for coming back.
Absolutely. We love Rockwood.
Excellent.
And we are so excited about Goth Ball. What exactly is it?
So this is a first-time fundraiser for Rockwood. It helps with sort of raising cash and sort of friends and support around preservation efforts across the park.
Excellent. So people, what do? They get dressed up? And then...
So one of the things that we sort of have learned about ourselves as we sort of think about Rockwood and what Rockwood means to the community is that people love our ghost stories and people love our architecture. They love the distinctive architecture of this space, which is referred to as Gothic Revival, a style that was really popular here in America from like the 1840s and the 1860s. And so we're leaning into this idea of the Gothic Revival and all things dark and ghoulish. And so we're just doing a huge festival around this, which starts off with the Goth Ball on September 29th.
So what time and where do we buy our tickets and how should we dress?
So let's start with the dress.
Okay.
You can wear pretty much anything you want to, but we love it if you get a little bit dressed up. So get the black eyeliner out, maybe get some sort of fancy shoes or something, but have fun with it. Really, you can get as elaborate or as tame as you want to go with it, but I think a lot of people are sort of using this as an excuse to get a little wild.
Well, hopefully this will be an annual thing so we can come back and capture some of the magic.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things. When people come, they're going to check out the architecture and admire everybody's costumes, but there are items here that you're going to put on display for people to kind of, feel the goth vibe. So
yeah, so the whole event for the Goth Ball is kind of like a little synopsis of everything that you can do here at Rockwood over the month of October. So it features this oddities tour that we're doing inside the museum that you can come and see all October. It also has the first night of our haunted tour, our haunted trails of Rockwood, which will be all of the park spaces around the 6 acres of trails surrounding the house will be lit up for ghostly interventions. And then we also have presentations that are happening from the revisionists, a Victorian storytelling walk through the park. So the revisionists are kind of like an experimental theater group. They're going to be there at the Goth Ball. They're going to give like a little preview of what you can see the last 3 weeks in October. And there's just a ton of things that are happening. We also have the best band. They're going to be playing, it's called Melt With You, and they're going to be playing, let me get this right, they're going to be playing 80s alternative music the entire evening. It's going to be super fun.
Oh,
but
nice.
You start off here at the museum and it's going to be a tour of the oddities of Rockwood. So we're going to set up all sorts of fun little vignettes through the house, and the people that are coming the night of the 29th during the Goth Ball will be the first to see some of these items actually in situ.
I wanted to start with a game. It's called a Senate, is that right?
Yes.
So tell me, what exactly is that?
So in 1922, archaeologists discovered the undisturbed grave of King Tut. Everybody's heard of King Tutankhamun, I think it is. So King Tut. And it sort of created this wave in the 1920s of all things all things Egyptomania. So, so this is an Egyptian game that was rediscovered with King Tut's tomb and had and sort of became really popular for people to consume. And so it's basically just pieces that you move across this board, and individuals still play it today. We found a copy of this here at Rockwood. So this is something that was collected by the family in the early 20th century. And it was just a really fun thing to sort of bring out and start to explain. At the same time, the family were also collecting really peculiar little Egyptian things, like this Egyptian revival pendant that we found in our collection. There's actually a set of earrings that go with this as well.
That's really pretty.
And it's just remarkable. The work is really, really fun, but it's a lot of look. Can you imagine wearing this out?
Seriously, you'd have to wear it with like a really heavy cord so that you wouldn't lose it.
And you could wear it to the Goth ball.
It's like an amulet of some kind. That's really cool. I wanted to go back to the game. It looks, does it open?
So there is a little drawer here that opens up at the very end, and some of the pieces that were used in Senate are sort of hidden there.
Fantastic. That's really cool. So talk to me a little bit about this. It looks like a vase, but it's not really a vase.
We think that it's meant to hold calligraphy brushes, and it's probably made from a product called cinnabar. It's Chinese, 19th century, really sort of romantic, really kind of over the top. You can see these kind of like dragon fish figures that are sort of,
that's really nice.
But again, it's one of these strange little oddities that we found here. You know, the family here at Rockwood lived in this house for 120 years, and they collected extensively. They traveled all over the world, and they would come back with these funny little things from everywhere. And so things from Asia, things from things influenced by Northern Africa, you name it. It just it sort of finds itself here.
Sure.
And during this oddities tour, we'll have probably in the neighborhood of about 60 to 70 objects like this on display in different parts of the galleries.
And what's interesting is that a lot of the items that you have documents where they wrote letters, or you have receipts. I mean, it's just amazing the paper that you have to back these things up, to place them in history in terms of context.
Completely true. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, when we return, we're going to find out about more of the oddities you can check out when you come to the Goth Ball. Stay with us.
I'm Debbie Buxton, the Executive Director of the Historic Odessa Foundation. Come discover Odessa with the 302.
Welcome back. We're checking out the oddities at Rockwood as part of the upcoming Goth Ball next weekend. So tell me a little bit about what these two glass objects are. I don't even know what they are.
So one of the things that we've been really interested in, some of the things that we have found here and trying to sort of identify and understand better, is the materials around the family's apothecary. So Joseph Shipley was the founder of this house, but his niece married into a family here in Wilmington called the Bringhursts, who had opened an apothecary on Market Street sometime around the 1785 period. And that family apothecary eventually became what's called a pharmacy today, and it was in existence until the 20th century. Eventually it got sort of bought out, and a lot of those materials from the apothecary ended up in different museums like Rockwood. So we think that this is some kind of scientific glass, perhaps a storage jar, perhaps a jar to be able to heat materials inside of it, that was probably used as that apothecary practice. And we have a lot of this kind of pseudo-medical materials, sort of at a time before medicine was very advanced, but when things like tincture of rhubarb or different kinds of spices or different kinds of herbs would have been able to, or people might have prescribed those things to help alleviate problems that you might be suffering from.
Sure, sure. And the coolest thing about this, besides its history, of course, is the design. It's like in gold. So would that be like a gold leaf or something?
It probably signified sort of a set of glasses that were used for different purposes.
That's really cool. Now, another thing that's really nice are this little box here. What exactly?
This is the strangest little, well, it's not even necessarily the strangest little thing, but it's just the most elegant. It is actually it's almost like a wallet or a case that would have held different kinds of implements that you might use. You can see the pockets on either side.
To like take teeth out or?
Maybe, we don't know what tools were actually inside of it. And all of this is silver inlaid, and there's a little sort of farm scene on the front of it. Very adorable. But the whole thing that's so interesting about this is that it's inlaid into tortoise shell.
Tortoise shell.
So this is actually, this is a material that I think is now now illegal to even sort of to trade in. But it is, and the animal itself is endangered. But tortoiseshell objects in sort of the American public today are revered, and they're really, really rare things to come across. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful little object, and it's survived for all this period of time. We think that this is probably from the very early 1800s, so this actually predates Rockwood, but had descended through the family, through the Brinkhurst family since the early 1800s.
Kind of handed it down. And there's also another shell you have here.
We do. So cowrie shells, this is probably, actually, I don't know what the origin of the cowrie shell this size is. I know that I've heard them associated with Northern Africa, but this one has been set into a pewter case, and it opens up. And originally, this would have been used for snuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you see them in silver mounts as well, but they're really, they were very desirable little collectibles back in the 1700s, 1800s, and it doesn't surprise me that one survived through the family.
Now, when you say snuff, for folks who may not know what that is that like tobacco?
Yeah,
or?
It's a finely ground tobacco that people used to pinch and inhale through their nostrils.
Oh man, that sounds terrible.
And you thought cigarettes were bad for you.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, we've got another little box here that looks like some kind of woven material.
There are a few objects in the collection that we think are sort of associated with Native Americans, and this is probably created from some kind of quill and woven into a basket form. I don't know exactly what Native American population that this is sort of identified with, but I've seen this tradition used with several different Native cultures to create sort of basketry. And this was just in our collection, just another really fun little collectible from the family.
So intricate. I mean, it must be really difficult to keep something like this preserved for, hundreds of years.
It's totally true, especially if anybody's using it on a regular basis. I mean, you can even see that there's some loss here that eventually will need to be fixed up. But for the meantime, it's just a really lovely little thing and sort of a curiosity about how it's created or what it's made from.
Yeah. Let's talk about that pillow. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, so there are a number of these pillows in the collection. This was created as kind of a commemoration. Sometimes these little beaded pillows are meant to sort of be like little keepsakes. You might give one as a gift to somebody. Sometimes they're with initials. Sometimes they are used as sort of like a woman's sort of sewing practice. So you might see sort of needles sticking from them. But a lot of the times they're just made for sort of commemorative purposes. And this one is really ornate. And you can see it has the sort of double flag motif across the front of it. These sort of beads hanging from the side of it. And it's probably mid-19th, later 19th century. And it is just a remarkable sort of holdover from a long time ago.
Absolutely. I can't think of the last time anyone ever gave me a handmade gift to commemorate anything.
We'll have to fix that.
Absolutely. Well, tell me about, we have a dog collar and some candlesticks.
Well, the candlesticks, these are actually commercially produced objects from very late 19th century, maybe around 1900. And these are just the strangest things. We were talking earlier about how interested the world had become in Egyptian motifs. At the same time, there was a style called the Art Nouveau that was becoming very, very popular. And so sometimes there was a crossover between these sort of contemporary styles like the Art Nouveau and these very ancient styles like Egyptian revival. And so like the crane that you see here is very reminiscent of some of the Egyptian imagery that we saw during the early 20th century. And then the base of the feet where you see these sort of lion paws hanging out on these little turtles, very ornate, very over the top. And you can just imagine them sort of sitting in a pair with candles burning. And
absolutely.
And so they will become a centerpiece in one of our oddities vignettes for the tour. And
the dog collar, do we know which dog this belonged to?
We don't, but there are over 75 dogs to choose from here. Our Edward Brinkhurst, the fifth, he lived here until I think it was the late 1930s, and he bred dogs here for over 40 years. And so this is just a really interesting little collar. It says E. Brinkhurst, and it talks about Wilmington, Delaware, but it has just these beautiful little inset sort of decorations. You can imagine it wasn't a very large dog, but obviously it was a very loved dog.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's just so much here. I just can't imagine being able to see it all. But whenever you come to the Goth Ball to check it out, there's also something called the Haunted Trails Tour, and we're going to talk about that when we return.
Hi, I'm Krista Matulowicz with the Biggs Museum of American Art. Go Biggs or go home with the 302.
Welcome back. We're learning all about the oddities you can see whenever you come out to the Goth Ball, but there's also a haunted trails tour. Now, that's the thing that I think people would really, besides all the great stuff happening inside the house, love happening outside the house.
And this is one of the great things that's free during the month of October. That's going to be really terrific here at Rockwood as well. So you can just come to the park. We're open late until 10 o'clock every night, and the lights just pop on naturally as it starts to get dark. And it's all the trails that are surrounding the house. So these are the really old trails, the portions of the park that are now 170 years old. And we've just lit them up with all sorts of like orange and reds and purples. It's not deliberately super scary. Nobody's going to jump out of a tree at you or anything like that, but it's meant to sort of get people in nature at nighttime.
So is there some kind of a story as we go from point to point that we hear when we go on the trail?
Nope, but it's really sort of, we give you a map. When you first come in, you park in the lower parking lot. There will be maps available for you there. But, and you're able to come and go as you want to. You can bring the kids, absolutely. You should plan to have just a good time. But, maybe 45 minutes to kind of get through those trails. And it's really self-directed. You can kind of explore and kind of find these funky little spots all over the park.
Sure, because whenever you go through, I mean, it's nighttime and it's going to be a little spooky, I would think.
Naturally. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, what is this about a murder mystery?
So we have so many programs. So the Goth Ball is really designed to sort of showcase to all the things that we're doing in October. The first 2 weekends in October, we have the murder mystery. So we call it Mayhem and Murder. And it's an old tradition here at Rockwood. We've been doing it for years. It's fantastic. But you come and you solve a murder mystery here inside the house. And you're here with a guide that helps sort of direct you through the museum, but you're looking for clues and you find all of these things and you figure out who did it in the very end.
So how does that work? I mean, do we come at a certain time, or
purchase
do we
tickets on rockwood.org, and then there's a start-off time. I believe that happens at 7 o'clock every evening on Fridays and Saturday nights for those first 2 weekends in October.
That just seems like it'd be so great because they do say that this place is haunted.
It's true. It's true. And we let you into spots in the house during the Mayhem and Murder program that we don't normally let individuals get to. So you might end up in the basement. You might end up in some of the scary servant spaces. Like, it's really, really fun.
And I've been down in that basement, and I got to tell you, it is really creepy down there.
It's the spookiest basement in Delaware.
You think somebody's going to jump out at you. You talk about how no one's going to, but it's always in the back of your mind when you're walking through there.
It's true.
It's really, really scary. So the murder mystery, is it something that is tied to the time of Rockwood, with the Bringhursts, or is it like a more modern day?
It's
or is
much
that
more.
secret?
It's a much more modern day, and it really sort of turns our guests into investigators, and they come through. It's kind of a cross between the game of Clue and kind of an escape room.
So Jackie Ferris did it in the library with the Egyptian candlesticks.
You have already solved the mystery.
There you go. But people should come out and check it out, and they can check the website for all of the information. Before we go, I wanted to talk to you about the Revisionists. Tell me about that.
So this is our second year with the Revisionists. They're an experimental theater group. And what they do is that they're in costume, and the individuals play characters that are able to commune with the dead. And they take you in spaces all over the park and tell you these interesting ghost stories, these original ghost stories. Sometimes they're sort of played into or sort of tied into the history here at Rockwood, but oftentimes they're just these Victorian ghost stories. And they are fantastic. They were sold out shows last year. We had a fantastic time, and this runs for the last 3 weeks of October.
That's amazing. Now, before we go, you got to tell us one of these ghost stories, just to kind of like pique people's interest to come and check out the Revisionists.
I was recently in our offsite storage facility that's just down the hill, and I was actually looking into this little cabinet of curiosities, where it was a new thing that had come to the collection, part of the family collection. I opened it up, and I was pretty convinced that another individual was in the room with me, about 10 feet away, staring at me while I was looking into these drawers. A little spooky.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that when the 302 crew came here and did a show earlier, I could have sworn that I know this is going to sound crazy, Elizabeth Bringhurst. I tell this story all the time in broad daylight, just kind of like watching us. And when I looked again, seconds later, gone.
People have stories like this all the time.
Yeah, the gentleman who was here before you talked about seeing Edward in a smoking jacket down the hallway. And so people have had sightings of like a black cloud. I mean, I've heard all kinds of crazy stories.
Yep, we hear a lot about the shadow man. We hear about dogs brushing up against your legs. We talk, there are cold spots in the house. We hear about these things every week.
So if people want to learn more, they have to come to the Goth Ball, to the Revisionists, and the Haunted Trails tour.
And just enjoy Rockwood at some point during October because we're getting dark.
Oh, I tell you what, anytime you come to Rockwood is a good time. And this, I think, is going to be, it's going to be elevated.
I think you're right.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for having us, in and showing us the oddities and giving us a little bit of a preview.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Fantastic. And we'll be right back. Hey, are you enjoying all of the oddities here at Rockwood? Well, if you happen to come for a visit, make sure you snap a picture and share it with us on our Facebook page. Now, here are a couple of other things that you can check out. For more information on Goth Ball or any of the exhibits or activities here at Rockwood, you can visit rockwood.org. That'll do it for this week's episode of the 302. Make sure you follow us on Facebook for behind-the-scenes content you're just not going to be seeing anywhere else. We're going to leave you now with video from the haunted spaces top to bottom here at Rockwood. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on the 302.